Let's meet Judas. Now you might know him as Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. For most of us, we probably first learned about him in Sunday school. He was the disciple that betrayed Jesus, the friend that sold out his best friend. He is synonymous with betrayal. And yet the stories of Judas have stayed with me long after that Sunday school lesson ended. And it's because as I read the accounts of his life, I saw more than just the one terrible choice he made. I saw a man wrestling with his faith, a man tempted by the dark side, a man that allowed greed to take over his heart. And when I think of Judas, I am confronted with the reality that I too can choose greed over generosity, self-interest over service, and ultimately betray what is right. So let's meet Judas. Judas was one of the 12 disciples. In John chapter 12, verse 6, he is described as the one who kept the money bag. This means that the other disciples entrusted their finances to him. In fact, they trusted him enough to keep track of what everyone had given and what everyone had received. Now this shows that Judas was trustworthy and loyal, at least up until that point. But in the same passage, John tells us that Judas was a thief, that he used his position to steal from the disciples. So while respected by the group, there was something about Judas that was off, something broken within him. He was like a friend that you secretly wondered, was he really your friend, or did he only hang around you because he wanted something from you? You knew that there were things about him that he was hiding from you. There were secrets that he was keeping. And it wasn't just the disciples that Judas was so close to. Jesus trusted him too. In fact, Jesus chose Judas to be one of his 12 disciples. And despite knowing all that Judas was capable of, Jesus took him in, spent time with him, taught him, and called him a friend. Yet Judas never really seemed satisfied. There was always something more that he wanted. And in Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 to 15, we see exactly what it was. In those passages, Judas goes to the chief priests and agrees to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Now you might be asking yourself, why would Judas do such a thing? Why would he betray his best friend, the Son of God himself? Well, for some people, Judas was just plain evil. That's just how he was wired. But I believe there's another explanation. You see, throughout Judas's life, he had experienced rejection, exclusion, and disappointment, and this caused him to develop an unhealthy need for acceptance. He desperately wanted to feel that he belonged. And here in this moment, the chief priests are giving him exactly that. They're accepting him, welcoming him, and promising him riches beyond his wildest dreams. It was as if Judas had finally been seen, had finally been appreciated, and was finally being told that he was worth something. And so he did what so many of us have done before. He chose himself. In Luke chapter 22, verses 47 to 48, we hear about the moment of the betrayal. The disciples have just come to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And when Jesus was there praying, Judas arrived with a crowd ready to arrest him. And it was Judas that identified Jesus, not with a shout or a weapon, but with a kiss. Imagine being there and seeing that. Jesus, whom you had followed for 3 years, whom you had seen perform miracles, whom you had heard teach, whom you had watched raise the dead, the very Son of God was being arrested by soldiers, and Judas was the one that betrayed him. What kind of man was Judas? What kind of heart was beating inside his chest? Was he excited to have done what he had done? Or deep down, even in that moment, was he filled with remorse? When we look at the text, I think we get a glimpse of what was going on in his heart. We read that when Judas realized that Jesus had been arrested, he was filled with regret. He returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." So in these verses we learn that Judas felt remorse. He didn't feel pride or accomplishment, but rather shame and regret. And this is important because it shows us that even in our darkest moments, even when we make our worst decisions, God can and does open our eyes to see what we have done and to give us the opportunity to repent. But Judas never got to that point. Instead, he gave back the money and then hung himself. Now, you might be wondering, how could someone be so overcome with guilt that they would take their own life? And I think it's because Judas didn't just betray Jesus. He betrayed what was right. He betrayed truth. He betrayed love. He betrayed hope. And he betrayed the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And while God can forgive us, there are times when we can't forgive ourselves. There are times when our guilt overwhelms us. And I think that that's what happened to Judas. He couldn't bear the weight of what he had done. He couldn't live with the memory of his actions. And so he took his own life. As I have reflected on the story of Judas, I am left with two main thoughts. First, we are all capable of choosing greed over generosity, self-interest over service. And second, we should never allow greed or betrayal into our hearts. These are two thoughts that are developed further when we consider the words of Jesus himself. In Mark chapter 14, verse 21, Jesus says, "Woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." When we look at these words, we can see that Jesus doesn't condemn Judas, but he does express deep sorrow over what he will do. Jesus knows Judas's future, knows what he will decide, and yet he still allows him to come and walk with him. And this teaches us that while we must never allow greed or betrayal into our heart, God still loves us when we do. He will still give us second chances. He will still show us the error of our ways, and he will still open our eyes so that we can return to him. However, once we choose to follow that path of greed and self-interest, once we choose to betray what is right, there is no turning back, and the pain and anguish that follows will last in eternity. You see, Judas chose greed over generosity, self-interest over service, and in doing so, lost eternal joy and eternal peace. And this is why, as followers of Jesus, we must constantly guard our hearts, be diligent in prayer, and make sure that the things of this world never become more important than Jesus. Because it's not just Jesus that we risk losing, it's our eternal soul. So Judas, thank you for reminding us of the consequences of greed, of the importance of guarding our hearts, and of the certainty of hell. May we never allow greed or betrayal into our lives, but instead may we always choose love, generosity, and faithfulness. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a friend. Until next time.